The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
Next time you see an angel, run, he might hit you. I'm just saying.
Yeah, speaking of suckling.
What?
I'm sorry, I did it again.
Oh, we'll get into it.
I don't understand.
I hate everything. See, this is the part where I normally get up and then I hit the end of the record button before they realize we don't know how to run a podcast. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
It's Cole. To my left.
I'm Joel, and to my left,
I'm Colton, and to my left,
It's me, Caleb. We've gone full circle. Sadly, we are missing Josh. He's here so often. It's so weird. He's gone.
Aren't you relieved? It's just us now.
Well, he's also our host, so we're in a different location.
Yeah, we are at a different location.
Yeah. So we miss you, Josh.
He's also sick.
Get better.
If you're listening to this right now, you have to pray for him. Otherwise, he won't get better.
Even though this might come out this will be released weeks after. Yeah, but God's not bound by time.
Yeah, that's
Neither
not
is prayer.
that's not the point. If you don't pause this right now and pray for him right now, we will know because he will die.
you're doing some Benny Hinn stuff right now. I don't know.
Anyway, here's the main takeaway leading into the podcast. Cole's wrong. Anyway,
I like to start off every day thinking Cole is wrong.
why are we so brutal right now, guys?
Because Cole was mean to Josh.
Yeah, that's fair.
We can't let anyone bully Josh.
Joel, what do we do on the internet? Where can people find episodes where Josh is there?
I don't know. You can check us out at secondratesaints.com for all of our episodes and our blog posts and book reviews and anything that we are going to be doing in the future. If you'd like to contribute or to support Second Rate Saints, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/second-rate-saints. There's a link at our website, or you can go right to the Buy Me a Coffee website. If you'd like to keep up to date with what we're doing day to day, we're trying to be more active on Twitter and what's the other one called? Instagram.
It's called X also.
Yeah, it's not even called Twitter anymore. Actually, I checked our X bio, and it does say official Twitter account of Second Rate Saints.
That's funny.
And I'm like, oh, well, I should really update that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Don't you dare.
I probably won't. If you go and check, I probably won't.
I do like that.
Yeah,
That's all we do.
that's all we do.
That's all we
That's
do.
everything. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did.
No, I don't think so.
It's just weird because I'm
Oh.
also doing the What Have You Read?
Yeah.
So
Did you mention the Buy Me a Coffee?
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention. I tuned you out.
Cole's getting money hungry over here.
So,
Guys,
Joel.
We need
Yeah?
to pay for Josh's medical bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of talking. I want you to talk some more. What have you read?
Yeah. So this week, I was perusing the internet, preparing for our next Thoughts in Real Time episode, as I always do, finding things that I find interesting. And I came across the best headline I think I've ever seen from any news article ever. Florida priest charged for biting a woman he says was desecrating the Eucharist.
So mind you, just for reference, what website is publishing this article?
The Catholic News Agency.
This is the Catholic Church's official news site, right?
I do like that on top of you have the great news people such as Florida Man
Yes.
and Florida Woman. You now have Florida Priest.
Florida priest. Okay, so here's the setup. There was a lady who had come to a parish in Florida. I believe it was Tampa Bay, something like that. And she decided that she was going to take communion today because she was just visiting. Is that?
I don't think that's in Florida.
Yeah, it is. Isn't that what he said?
St. Cloud.
St. Cloud's the city?
St. Cloud
Yeah.
is the city. That's the city?
It's about 21 miles south of Orlando.
Orlando?
Okay, well, I'm
Orlando
not
Bloom.
from the States, and that's very obvious to everyone. Okay, it's near Orlando. Anyways.
Tampa Bay.
So the story goes that she was coming to the first communion of her niece and decided that she would also partake in communion. And so she went up to the front of the church to take communion from the priest. And basically, he could tell that she didn't know what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then he asked, have you confessed lately? Or like that kind of thing. You know, are you prepared for communion? And she didn't know how to answer him. And so he didn't let her take it.
Yep. If this is not uncommon. This happens
Yeah.
every once in a while.
And there's something to be said there where she was there with her, with her partner, her wife or something like that. That's kind of how the story goes. And so there may have been more than one thing that was, leading this priest to say, hey, maybe she's not prepared to take communion. And so she comes back for the second service of the day. And she tries to take it again. But this time she kind of lunges for it and he bites her arm.
And what is her justification?
The article says that she said, I just wanted a cookie. Which to me is the most...
It's a clear lie.
It's just patronizing. It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't think she believes that.
Not at all. I think her thing was, I should be allowed to do this because they have no right to judge me. But here's the thing with the Catholic Church. They kind of do.
Apparently they talked for 45 seconds or so before something actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was 45 seconds and then he said no. And then she tried again.
Yeah.
So.
And then he bit her.
So
here's the thing. She came in trying to make a scene.
Yep.
She disrupted the peace of the service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of on the side of the priest.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's something to be said in the Pauline epistles. I think it's Corinthians specifically, where he outlines that, hey, some of you are ill and have passed away because you've partaken in the Eucharist incorrectly.
Yeah.
And so what this priest is doing is for her sake. It's not just some arbitrary rule. It's no, this is something that needs a certain amount of reverence. Are you in right standing with the Lord? She clearly is not, and she clearly kind of resists that whole idea. And then he says, you shouldn't take the Eucharist. When she comes back in the second service, his response is, hey, have you confessed your sins? It's
She says literally, no, I don't need to explain to you. I don't need to give an explanation. You don't have authority. You don't need to judge me. And then he says, I'm not judging you. You're just not going to take communion.
Yep. Also, here's the thing. That is kind of his job a little bit.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's their reasoning for him distributing communion to begin with.
Yeah, and so when she's told a second time, no, she goes to lunge for it.
Yep.
He pulls back. She's still going for it, and he's not going to drop the Eucharist because that's the sacrament. So he's like, I guess I'm going to bite her.
Now, here's the thing. Charges are being laid against him.
Vatican's
he did
got
bite
money.
somebody.
To be fair, he
Vatican's
did bite
got
her.
money.
Vatican's got money, sure. Yeah, he bit her. In my mind, it feels a little bit like he was actually defending his property, kind of a thing like that. In my mind, that kind of worked.
Sure, what he's responsible for. Also, I
Yeah.
just realized, what do you think his fellow priests think of him? It's just awesome. Like the clout that he got in his own.
Okay, so the way I found this article was from a page I follow on Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and Protestant friendly discourse. I think that's
Okay.
along the lines of the name. And it was, hey, pray for this pastor because he's getting charges laid against, or pray for this priest because he's getting charges laid against him, and he really needs our help right now. There was no thought of hey, this guy shouldn't have done this. Everyone was like, we'll be praying. Right? It's just, yeah.
Well, and it's her and her partner went to the second service, which the whole reason why they went to the first was for the baptism of the niece, if my memory's right.
First communion.
First communion of the niece. But that means her niece and the family of her niece,
They didn't stay?
they didn't stay.
No.
Yeah.
Which means the second time, it's just trying to.
No, I do even reading, I've just reread through some of her statements and stuff. First of all, clearly she's she says that when she was a kid, she was kind of baptized and stuff like that. Probably she said she did all the stuff she needed to as a kid. And so she doesn't care about what he wants to say to her now. He refers to it as a cookie, refers to it as the bread, stuff like that in a more derisive tone than just, the bread. The bread that's given to us, not in a reverent way. If now this might be me just taking it too far, but from what I could see, it does seem like she was trying to make a scene specifically.
Yeah.
And trying to get attention and potentially.
Have you watched the video?
I have not. I only noticed that there was a video as I reread it.
It's not a great video. You can't see exactly what happened. You only see kind of hey, everyone's
Ow.
walking up. She's kind of like talking to her for a minute, and then all of a sudden she's kind of like pushed back, right? And
There's blood coming from the mouth of the priest. No,
I don't think it went that far.
yeah.
So
I don't know.
is this a win for the Catholic Church?
Definitely not.
Well, reading through that, they supported his actions for defending the Eucharist,
yeah.
but they didn't support the bite.
Well, yeah, they didn't admit.
Obviously.
I don't think the church admitted to the bite, or like they weren't as explicit, but they're like,
Yeah.
he defended the sacrament, which is what he is supposed to do.
Shouldn't bite people.
he
though.
did his job. Maybe a little too hard, but we're not gonna punish it for him.
Yeah, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, is there anything in place to protect that? Like, is there something else that should have happened? Because here's the thing, if, like, she's also kind of trespassing a boundary there.
Yeah.
Well, you have to get into the argument of, is this within religious rights?
Well, she has the right to want to participate in the Eucharist, but she does not have the right to the Eucharist.
Yep.
And
Does he have the right to defend the Eucharist if he truly believes that it is the living body of God?
Right and responsibility.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I don't know. Okay, so perhaps this isn't actually related, but a few months ago, I think it was in Ohio, the Church of Satan erected a statue of Baphomet. And then almost immediately, some guy, he's running for like senator or congressman right now, God bless him, crosses a state line, goes to the state house, chops down the statue of Baphomet, takes off its head, and then immediately goes to the police and says, I did that.
I do respect the latter part, man. That's pretty cool.
And here's the thing. This last week, the charges were dropped. The last of them. He got like a minor fine, but that won't even be on his record forever. It's just like, we clearly recognize that there are religious practices or religious activities that are done in bad faith and aren't actually legitimate. And apparently that does have some standing in the law. So does this disordered woman who's participating or trying to participate in the Eucharist incorrectly, I think they got the legal wiggle room to say, hey, that's a no from us.
Right. But at the same time, how many people are willing to say, oh, yeah, the priest is defending the body of God, whereas most people, I think, would say he's protecting a cup and he bit someone.
When you say most people, are you referring to most people in a secular sense or most people within the body of Christ?
I just say general, even within the body of Christ.
Catholics.
Well, that's the thing. I'm saying general body of Christ because most people are like,
I think most non-Catholic. I think the majority of North American Christians would just go, it's not that big of a deal. He shouldn't be that big about it.
Let's remember, we're also having this conversation as people who are also not allowed to participate in communion if we go to the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
This is four Protestants talking about it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't think if
I
I,
think
dodged in and tried to grab.
I think he is justified in trying to defend it since he sincerely and based on how the faith lines it out, believes that it is the actual living body of Christ.
Mhm.
He basically, I mean, okay, maybe that's overstating. I'm not going to say that, but he is defending God in that sense.
I mean, I suppose one can make the same argument, or there's a similar argument to be made in saying, is a parent right to slap the hand of a child if they reach for the hot stove? Because that is what the priest was doing.
Mhm.
Because if that woman partook in the Eucharist, she is bringing judgment onto herself.
And also potentially the church too.
That
Maybe.
one's less.
Yeah, that one's it depends.
Well, yeah, I think you'll have some arguments that go there, but I think the reason why Cole's point is so strong is because Paul specifically makes that argument.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so if we're in a place, even in a civil setting, I think there's an argument to be made that minor correction is preferable to extreme consequence.
Yeah. And since I'm sure we don't want to get into the pedantics of law and stuff, is biting really the best way he could have done that?
I mean,
I don't really see many other options, to be honest.
I watched the video and I can't figure out how he could have bit her,
With
but
his
I'm sure
mouth,
it
I
happened.
yeah,
Well, yes, no, I got that one.
because he's not denied it either.
No, he's like,
No.
I did this, yeah. But I just,
Thematically, it's on point for what's happening at the moment.
I can't. I guess he's holding.
Consuming flesh. Get it.
He's two-handing the cup. He can't just reach out.
Yeah. I wonder if there are going to be measures to protect the Eucharist now.
No.
Like a gun.
No.
Like, well, yeah, like a gun.
No, I don't think so. They've had
don't think
issues like this throughout the past.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of someone walking up to communion and there's like the one usher with the plate of bread, the next usher with the wine, the next one with the gun.
Wouldn't it be the gun
You like
first?
that?
He's just a bouncer. That's actually what we would need.
Yeah, this is not a suggestion for the Catholic Church, by the way. It'd be funny.
You know,
Has half
The
of our
section of the-
recommendations.
Yeah.
If it's funny.
yeah.
That is my rule of thumb.
Well, if the
it's funny,
Catholic
it's okay.
Church is listening to this podcast, then just let us know if that was helpful for you.
Yeah, we know Francis listens in every week.
What's up, Fran?
You've just isolated every single Catholic listening.
Sorry.
In fairness, I do support Florida priests.
Florida.
I think I support Florida Priest. At the same time, I'm a 50-50 on it.
See,
I don't know if biting really
Biting was
is-
clearly not the right thing to do. But it was her second time trying to do this.
Yeah, she was clearly doing it in bad faith, trying to make a scene.
Mhm.
And he is, in his mind, he is defending the Eucharist.
I mean,
Like,
one can quibble about if it's the ideal thing exactly, but at a certain point, if it's a bad situation, your good response can only be so good with
true.
respect to that
that's true.
context.
It's just whether or not biting is ever good.
I mean, I suppose he could have kicked her.
I also think he could have. He is 66, though.
So it might just be a gummy bite.
Yeah.
I mean, how is he? Never mind.
That's how they knew he bit him because
he's
the
like
dentures fell
So it's
out.
not really biting. It's
Just
not really
locked on.
biting at that point.
He's just like an infant. He just kind of suckles on it at the end.
Anyway,
I'm sorry, everyone.
And back to our topic
Oh,
that we
man.
never actually got to.
Yeah.
Axe.
Yeah, speaking of suckling.
what?
What?
I'm sorry, I did it again.
Oh, we'll get into it.
I don't understand.
I hate everything. Okay. Acts. We're going to continue on with Acts. Going to do chapter 12 today. But previously, we had gone through Peter's recounting of the events with Cornelius and his dream in chapter 11. And kind of, we covered that even in the previous chapter. And so last episode, we wandered around quite a bit and talking about baptism in the Holy Spirit from different perspectives on that. And then the second part of chapter 11 that we talked about was the gospel exploding in Antioch. You have, again, the apostles send a representative, Barnabas, to go up there, part of the same body of Christ, part of that apostolic group. And then we talked about prophets because it does mention prophets talked about a famine that was coming.
Yep.
Angry bus.
Yeah. Joel had some emotions on that one. That was a good episode. I do enjoy that one.
Okay.
But we're gonna go talk about chapter 12. So Colton,
Hello.
take it away.
Josh isn't here to read it, so that's my job. Okay. This is Acts 12, 1-5. About that time, Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. He killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the days of unleavened bread. And when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church.
So this is mentioning that this is happening during the time of Passover. So roughly, it's been about a year since Jesus was crucified. Am I right in my timeline?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe 2. You can make the argument 2, but I think
At least 1 year.
because that's how long it takes for events from one side of the year to come back around.
Time is cyclical. Anyways.
Cylindrical.
Don't read.
Time is cylindrical.
That's not it.
Time occurs in a cylinder.
So he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Do any of us have specific ideas
Yeah,
concerning
who is
James
John
and John?
with the sword?
No.
I have my favorite
This is
disciple,
the
John
Apostle
with the sword.
Or Apostle James, right?
Yes, this would be the one actually in Jesus' inner circle, because you have the three, then the 12, then the 40, then the 72. Am I getting my numbers right?
Brothers of Thunder, the 2.
Sons of Thunder.
sorry.
The Zebedee son. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this would be John's older brother, James, who was, from what we read in the Gospels, was up there with James, John and Peter in Jesus' kind of innermost circle, very, very connected to Jesus' more one-on-one teaching.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not to be confused with the half brother of Jesus.
You know what? To me, what this does, it proves to a certain degree. Now, of course, you bring a lot of like pre-knowledge with this, or like presuppositions with it. Jesus had James in the inner circle, not only so that, because he's good and useful to proclaim the gospel, because he dies almost immediately. He had James in the inner circle just because they were good friends.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's not a utility thing. It's like, well, Peter and John are going to be, like great evangelists. Well, James never
Jesus took pleasure in James
in that close relationship that they had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, it's not just those three were the ones who then made the biggest impact in the church. James probably left a pretty significant impact in the church that we don't really know that much about.
Yeah, that's an interesting argument. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No,
that's a really interesting argument for the historicity of the Bible, because if it was just the disciples were saying, hey, here are the disciples that did the most historically, so they were the ones that were closest to Jesus. If they were going back and then faking a history, they would have made it more about the important disciples, but they didn't. They made it about James.
Or even like talk up James. Like they talked up Stephen, or they talked up other martyrs and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that we should clarify, by when we say James, the brother of John, or James, the disciple, another term in church history that'll be called is James the Greater.
Right.
And then you have James the Lesser,
which is the half brother of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the one in the later chapters who's the leader of the Jerusalem
church. He's the the proto bishop-ish. Leader.
Yeah, he and Peter seem to have been like a two-man team basically running
kind
it.
of. Yeah. It seemed more like James was in charge of like the mother church of Jerusalem, and then Peter and the rest of the apostles were in charge, was somehow above that, but also related to. We'll get into that when we get cross that bridge.
Different roles, kind of.
The two popes, yeah.
But like
interesting.
But yeah, like James the Lesser probably had a bigger impact historically than James the Greater.
Yes, especially if the Didache comes out with early church document, or the Didache, depending on how it's pronounced. If it really did come out of the
Jerusalem
church, as well as some of the churches into Syria and all that.
Yep.
Because that's its claim, is connection through there.
Right.
He may have had direct impact in how that came about, at least.
And those have to do with like order of service for churches, essentially, like a lot of
perhaps
religious ritual. No, we have the Didache.
No, I know, but it depends on how you define when it was written.
90 to 110. It's a narrow window.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is that's still like 50 years after James.
Now, when it's talking about brother of John, this is John, the disciple that Jesus loved, correct?
Yes.
Which then also means that
the author of the gospel.
The author of the gospel, also probably the one who wrote the Revelation.
Yep. And potentially, I mean, I lean, but I also haven't done that much research into the epistles as well of John.
Oh, yeah.
At least some of them.
He's the last surviving of the apostles.
The Revelator.
Yep. I do like John the Revelator. That's my favorite term for him.
Yeah. The one who is naked in the garden, maybe? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Maybe.
Yeah, when Jesus was captured, there's a reference to a naked man who runs around in flight trying to get away, and it's theorized that
remember that.
It's theorized that was the author of the Gospel of John, kind of was like saying, "Hey, that was me," just without doing it, obviously.
Right.
Same way that
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, because the author makes a few references to himself. This isn't a conversation about the Gospel of John, but then at the very end, he's like, "And Jesus said that he will live for a long time," but he meant it in a metaphorical sense.
And now, naked man. His brother is dead.
Yeah.
So I do have a question.
By Herod.
Yeah, and Herod sees the Jews like it, which is one question. But the other aspect too, he's killed with the sword.
Yep.
The sword
is a traitor, right?
No. If you're not a Roman citizen, you're crucified. Or there's other forms. if you're a Roman citizen, you're killed with the sword. Or this is not a Roman court. And that's why
Right.
Agrippa can just do whatever.
Mm.
Do we want to get into who Agrippa is? He comes back later on in chapter 12.
Yes, he does.
Mhm.
Okay. So Herod Agrippa is not King Herod from Jesus' birth.
Yeah.
Herod
He's
is
his-
more of the title, right? And like name.
It's
family
the name. It is the name.
The house title. Yeah,
yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, and this
The clan.
But here's the thing: Herod's father was not named Herod. It was. I lost it.
I forget as well.
I don't know.
Regardless,
he was technically significant, but not
Clearly not significant enough.
not enough for me.
not right now.
Herodias.
Technically, Herod the Great is Herod Agrippa's great grandfather.
Herod the Great being the one that tried to find Jesus.
He tried to find Jesus, but also did a lot of like projects around
Yep.
Jerusalem that the New Testament even kind of talks about and alludes to.
Yeah.
And so he has there's you can get into like the weird politics of how Agrippa got back into power. Essentially, he had friends in the right places in the Roman government, specifically the Emperor Caligula. I can never say it. Caligula. Oh,
Caligula.
thank you.
Thank you.
I even practiced before the episode. And basically he failed upward by having friends in right places.
And that's never happened since.
Yeah, that never happens in
That
government.
sounds very political. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So that's who this Herod is.
Mm.
And it's important to note that King Herod's kingdom got split up into two. So there's actually two kind of tetrarchs
Yeah.
going around right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Okay.
come into play in the story, but what it does do is it points that Herod Agrippa does not have the consolidated power or the reputation or the that Herod the Great did. Think of it, he failed upward. He's trying to legitimize his rule. He cares what the Jews think. So when he sees that, oh, they like it when I kill James.
Yep.
Let's do that more. And I think the death with
Trying
the
to win their
sword.
side.
Yeah, I think the death with the sword is a nod.
Judicial.
Yes,
Right.
is it's not an actual legal proceeding.
So here's another thing to make note that this is only 34-ish years since Herod the Great. And Herod the Great, if you look historically, you'll find that he's generally considered a pretty stinking good king.
Mhm.
He built tons of stuff. He rebuilt the temple. He was kind of brilliant in the way that he was balancing Rome's interests as well as like the local Jewish population's interests, trying to, and like people look at the Pharisees and the Sadducees as trying to balance Jerusalem, specifically their religious condition, trying to keep the zealots in check while at the same time trying to achieve their goals. Herod was much the same way. He was sitting on top of a keg that was about to burst, and it didn't in his lifetime.
Mhm.
Herod of Agrippa here is not doing as well. And
I don't even think he has the capacity to realize that game's being played.
no, definitely not. And like the kingdom's falling apart, and the people who are living during this time probably knew of Herod the Great or saw it all fall apart.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, because they would have seen his temple, they would have seen the aqueducts he made, they would
Yeah.
have seen like all of the things he did for their cities.
Because Caligula was assassinated, right?
Possibly by Sadducees.
No, no, no. But he was assassinated. You're correct.
And then Claudius came to rule.
Claudius was cooler from what my-
Apparently, Claudius, Herod Agrippa helped Claudius come to power. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to take control over Judea and and Sumeria and
Oh.
area.
Yeah.
Area.
There's strong ties into Rome. Also, Herod Agrippa grew up in Rome, not in.
Mm.
So it's yeah.
You actually find there's a lot of people who were really close to the Caesars in and around the Judea area.
That's interesting.
Yeah, something's going on there. Like Felix later on.
Collusion.
Mm.
I also looked it up, and apparently he died in 44 AD, which would make this 10 years after, or like roughly 10 years after Jesus died.
There's also a reference. You know what? No, we'll get into it when it actually comes into the passage
Yeah.
of why it might be much older than 1 or 2 years.
Mm.
But I was going to save that for that passage.
Yeah, that'll be at the end of the chapter. Okay, so this was during the days of unleavened bread, and when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to the squads of soldiers, guard him, intended the Passover. Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. That's the response.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
No revolt, no fighting, no getting him out.
It is
Pray to God.
It is pacifism, very clearly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I might even agree.
Yeah. You're saying a very weighty statement there, but yes, I do agree in this passage. Absolutely.
I think what ends up happening if you say pacifism is you're saying that this story is a proof text for a much larger idea that goes beyond the context of this.
This is
Verse.
descriptive. That's
Yes.
what we're saying. This is descriptive, not prescriptive.
Yeah.
Which means it's not
right.
It's
Yeah.
not making a claim for pacifism. It's saying the actions were pacifist.
Yeah, and
There's,
that idea of pacifism is pretty consistent throughout Acts.
That is true.
That's true.
You can make a case for it. But
there is an aspect of prescription you can read out of a lot of parts of the Bible, and
Mhm.
some of it is justified, some of it's not. I think you can say, especially since Acts does have a repeated thing of this, it is saying that the Christians during this time did and ought to have done this, that
Mm.
this was the right thing to do.
I think if you tie it into how, and I think this continues on in the early church as well. What's being communicated in Acts is not pacifism is the standard way to operate in all things. It's the gospel of God, the message of the kingdom is preached through passive terms, through turning the other
Turning
cheek,
the other cheek.
through emulating Christ, through taking on suffering and transforming it.
Yep.
That's what's being preached. Not pacifism is a way of life regarding all things in violence.
yes.
The ending of this chapter especially also emphasizes, or like what we're going to get into as well.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, it emphasizes that the Lord is the one that will do the Lord's work. He is the one that will exact the judgment. He will be the one that will save those who need to be saved.
The commanders of the worms carry on.
All right.
Well, there are a few significant things that happen with Herod's death. Spoilers.
But we're not there yet.
Sorry.
He's dead.
But wow, I just spoiled it. But Herod killing James is also an important part of this. Is an important part of this.
bookends
It's not
to this
just
chapter.
Yeah.
like he defends Peter, he doesn't defend James. There's no merit there
Yep.
that chose that Peter should live and James should die. There's reasons. It's God's will behind it.
All right.
Shall I continue?
Peter is rescued. Let's get into it.
Okay. This is verses 6 to 10. Now, when Herod was about to bring him out on that very night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly." And the chains fell off his hands. And the angel said to him, "Dress yourself and put on your sandals." And he did so. And he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." And he went out and followed him. He did not know what was being done by the angel was real, and thought he was seeing a vision. When they had passed the first and second guard, they came to the iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went out and went along one street. And immediately the angels left him.
Wild.
Yeah, very wild.
I think my favorite part is that the angel struck him.
Yeah.
And
He smacks him.
What-
Wake up.
that's the thing. Normally, whenever you hear struck in the Bible, it's a pretty like aggressive motion.
Yeah, usually a killing blow.
And he struck him.
Yeah, he struck him. It's just like he didn't have to, but he did.
Smack in the side.
I love how stupid people are every time an angel shows up. That's my favorite thing of the Bible.
Yeah, the angel of the Lord came, right?
Yeah.
It says
Like every-
Anne.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It says
Indefinite article.
Anne. Yeah.
Yeah.
S-
I don't know, I'm
So
I'm
it's
not going to
not
make a ton of
Jesus.
arguments off of that. I wish Josh was here to do angel of the Lord stuff,
I
but
know. It would have triggered Josh, but he's not here.
I don't know how
I don't think he would have triggered because it was just, okay, it's wrong.
I don't know. It's funny though.
he just jumps in the door.
Okay.
Hey. Yeah.
So Peter, he's pretty dumb though for not realizing that this isn't real life, right? Because he has never had a vivid vision before, right?
Oh, wait.
Wait
a
a
minute.
second.
Cornelius, he has the vision.
Yeah.
Unless a real sheet dropped out of heaven with all the
Yeah,
animals.
no one saw it.
3 times.
Yep.
I believe that.
Here's
Everyone
the
was
thing,
just
though.
looking down on
The
that day.
implication of if he could get up and kill and eat it would imply that it is real.
It would be kind of terrifying.
But also the vision implies that he would never choose that.
Yes.
Hmm.
And regardless, he's seen visions that are otherworldly in the past.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why the angel struck him so hard, so that like
He would know it wasn't a dream.
And it didn't work.
like he gets back to the other disciples like, I saw an angel. What's your proof? This. It's just like a mass.
bruise?
It's a bruise or a black eye. He's like, the Lord did this to me.
That's what Jacob did.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Oh, there's a connection now that this is. I'm sorry, no, I can't.
Let's
do
make
this.
a whole Bible theology out of angels punching people.
do you think? Hey, remind me, because it's been a while since I've read it. Is the people who stay in the cell after being let out by the angel, the people who stay, is that Peter or is that Paul and company?
Oh, it's Paul.
It is Paul.
Paul
Okay,
and
never
company.
mind. Then my argument holds no water.
Yeah, it's the jailer who's about to kill himself after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it is
I was-
wild that I don't know. It does, like Colton was saying previously, the church knows that even when God doesn't deliver her saints, that he can. But this kind of solidifies, but he didn't for James and he did for Peter.
I think we also have to accept that Peter is kind of special.
But James was in the same situation,
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
right?
But Peter's the Pope. No, I'm sorry. But that aside, Peter is special. I don't think that's why God saved him necessarily. But I think someone would bring it up.
Yeah, it's just an eternal mystery.
Yeah, but also Peter's not special in anything out of himself. It's the work
Yeah.
of God through him. So it could have been James anyway.
Even this passage shows that's not really his own accord at all. He thought it was all a dream, really.
Angels have to hit him.
Yep.
But that's the thing, with the exception of maybe Thomas, like Peter is the disciple that gets dunked on the most in the Gospels and
Yeah, he
Acts.
has foot and mouth
Yeah.
syndrome.
Yeah, he does.
Also, I do find it
Gets
interesting that he
beaten
gets
by
up
John racing to the tomb.
slow.
That's right.
I do also find it interesting that he's like, "Hey, get up, bang!" Right, or punches him, bang, get up. He like gets up. Get dressed. Okay, get dressed.
Shoes.
Put on your cloak. Okay. It's like has to walk him through, which is kind of funny because it is somewhat reminiscent of Jesus' own prophecy of Peter's death.
What do you mean?
You will be clothed. You will stretch out your hands. You'll be clothed by others and led to where you do not want to go. And I'm not saying that's what it is.
Right.
But
It's not quite.
there's a
that.
weird enough, like, similar thing.
Peter might have thought he was going to die. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. There's a weird enough. He's close to death. Someone has to tell him, "Hey, get dressed,"
Yeah.
and then he's brought somewhere. It's just there's funky little ties.
I think there are symbolic things in this for what the angel does, how it all operates, stuff like that. But I also think it's a fairly real moment in the Bible. First of all, it doesn't really hype up Peter as being this great, like, God whisperer or something like that. He didn't summon an angel
That
army
actually
to
blames
save
the
him.
church for summoning the angel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually-
Summoning the angel.
The Christians in chapter 12 look pretty dumb.
Yeah,
Yes.
at least one of my favorite lines in the Bible.
And also, like, if you were asleep, let's say you're asleep in your house, no matter how bad it is, let's say you are in jail, and then someone kicks you in the side and it's clearly an angel, clearly, like, you're gonna know it's an angel. And then they lead you out, take off your chains, whatever, the door opens in front of you. You're 100% thinking that's a dream. You're not thinking that's real.
Well, the thing with angels is that they're obvious when they want to be obvious.
That's true.
Did this angel not want to be obvious, or was it obvious and Peter was just that done?
I
Oh,
think
you're
the
saying-
fact that he thought it was a vision makes it seem that there was this aura of holiness or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. So you're saying that he might not have appeared to be an angel?
Maybe.
I never
Well, he
thought
has
about
the
it like
light.
that.
I do like the idea that he shows up like the cop that bangs on the jail bars
Yeah.
and then shines a light in and goes, "Hey, what are you doing in there?"
Yeah.
Kicks him.
Yeah, and light shone in the cell.
Yeah. So I think the implication of that being the angel is showing in his glory.
Mhm. right, shall we move on?
Probably.
I think so. Okay, this is verses 11 to 19. When Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting." When he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many were gathering together and were praying. And when he knocked on the door at the gateway, a servant girl named Rhoda came out to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. They said to her, "You are out of your mind." But she kept insisting it was so, and they kept saying, "It is his angel." But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened, they saw him and were amazed. But motioning to them with his hand to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said to them, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." Then he departed and went to another place. Now, when day came, there was no little disturbance among the soldiers over what had become of Peter. And after Herod searched for him and did not find him, he examined the sentries and ordered that they should be put to death. Then he went down from Judea to Caesarea and spent time there.
Okay, so several things. First of all, the funny one.
There's a few funny ones.
Mary, whose name was also Mark. No, it's John, whose also name was Mark.
Yeah,
But
it's a weird that too.
I do find it interesting that the dude gets out of prison, right? Escapes by divine power.
Yep.
Right? Divine intervention. Escapes.
Mary opens
then
the
is-
door. She slams it.
No, he's then stuck in an alleyway, knowing that they'll be hunting him. And she's like, my friends just won't let me in.
Yeah.
Come on.
And he keeps knocking too.
Yeah.
It's probably one of those less than spiritual moments where he's on the verge of cussing. He's like, "Let me in, let me in,
Let me in. Let me in.
I mean, he's probably in like a half like, that was awesome state. Like, oh my gosh, I encountered an angel of the Lord. That was great. And then the half terrified, what if they find me?
Mhm.
So yes, I do think he was like that a little bit.
I do like how they name drop certain people, like a servant girl named Rhoda.
Mhm.
They didn't have to mention her.
They do that a lot in this book.
Yeah, Acts does that.
There was a lady in my church that her claim to fame was that she's named after this one girl.
That's her claim to fame.
Yeah, she mentioned it every time I talked to her. Remember,
Really?
that's my name.
I don't know how to open doors.
It's been 35 years. I haven't done it once.
Nobody's allowed in my house.
The
No,
door
the
doesn't
gates
open
shall be
unless the
open.
Lord opens it.
And then recognizing Peter's voice. If they're in the upstairs and Peter's voice is carrying to them, he's not being quiet. And if he's afraid that the Romans are coming for him,
Hey guys,
Help, please.
So there's, I read some stories not too long. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but it was about the underground church, and their fear when they saw a member of their church again was like, okay, it's one of two things: either the Lord has released them from prison by the angelic intervention, or they told on us and they're now walking free. And if they
Yeah,
see
now
us,
we're gonna
then
die.
yeah,
Yeah.
now we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Right. And I wonder if there's some of that going through the head of the people in the
I don't
house
think
that they're
so.
like, hey, did Peter did Peter betray us?
I don't think so.
But they,
I mean, he
immediately
betrayed
think,
Christ.
they think
Yeah.
she's wrong immediately, and then they
They
think,
call her crazy.
they do, and then they say, "Oh, really? Okay, well, it must be his angel, his spirit, his
okay. So
dead
can,
spirit."
can we talk about that? It is his angel. That seems to be among the more literal word for word translations of it.
I also think that maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just the ESV rendering, but maybe verses like this are what have made people think that when they die, they become angels. I know that was a thing that as a kid I thought was true. That I'd
What
become
does
an
it
angel when I
mean
died.
that the majority of the disciples at some point thought that the dead are angels?
Can we
You would
confidently
need to
say
back that up.
No, I think this would be the backup. Here's my
Is this a
argument.
translation thing?
This is what it means. It means they hadn't met Paul yet, who told them, "No, that's dumb. Don't think that way." No,
I mean, they had met him, but yes,
yeah.
He'd only recently stopped trying to kill them.
that's true.
That's true.
About 10 years ago.
Which
Fair
is
point.
a weird bar for they had already met him.
So I'm pulling up some different translations here. In the King James, this is what it reads. And they said unto her, thou art mad. But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, it is his angel. So it's
Okay.
that word again. It's not ghost. It's not spirit.
Not spirit.
That clears it up.
It is angel, by the way, in the Greek.
It is.
Just FYI, it is angel.
Like
Ah, yeah.
messenger
Even
angel.
even the NIV has angel.
Angelos.
Yeah.
It is angel.
Interesting.
Where's the Good News translations?
So what
This-
you're saying is that the Bible affirms that we become angels when we die.
No, what I think it affirms, and I think this is clear if you read the New Testament in light of, even just, let's just lower it down
Mhm.
to Paul. There is development of doctrine.
Yes.
Right. That this would be more of a superstition.
I don't know if I'd go around labeling that. What I think it is
Okay.
is the Holy Spirit is guiding his church to correct belief. That would imply that they are not arrived at correct belief at all times.
Sure.
One could say that it's a remnant from a different part of perhaps a more mystical sect of Jewish thought,
Yes.
but it doesn't get carried on.
And this is why the Sadducees, when they talk about when you die, there are no spirits, or you do not turn into a spirit or an angel. That's why that text sometimes when
Okay.
people say they don't believe in angels. What are you talking about? They believe in the Pentateuch. There's angels all over the Pentateuch.
Yeah.
Their argument, the Sadducees, is that when you die, you don't become an angel,
Mhm.
which is appearing to be what maybe some of the disciples in Jerusalem thought at that time.
Right.
Also, here we'll get into it for a second. Peter tells the people there, hey, tell James, that'd be the half brother of
His
Christ,
brother. Yeah.
and the other elders. He doesn't say apostles. This may indicate that we're actually much later than 1 or 2
Right.
years
This
after
is
Christ.
actually 10 years.
Maybe, or somewhere
Right.
in that, somewhere in between that, right? Because the jump towards 12 may be inserted from later history into
Right.
it, just because it's like, hey, this is a good time to thematically tie, Agrippa's punishment with Agrippa's sin. Man, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What you also have there implied, if the apostles aren't there, it means the apostles have moved on, they've gone on, and it means that they've set up like the James and the elders in the church in Jerusalem. You have James and then the elders.
Yes.
So, to that point, because you almost made it so quick that someone might have missed it, where there's a possible realigning of the chronological events in Acts here, where Agrippa's actions and his death are paired together for the sake of conveying almost like a mini arc for him.
Yeah.
I think one of the criticisms that one could bring, not unreasonably, is to say that the book of Acts was written by Luke. And Luke, specifically, as you can see in both works, is really concerned with making sure that his gospel and his writings are conveying some
Historical accuracy and historical chronology are not necessarily the same thing.
That's the truth.
But
Yes.
Acts
And that's what I was
does
going to
give,
get to.
like, a pretty solid chronology a lot of the time.
Well, yeah.
Generally.
Yes. And so that's the thing
Yeah,
with
sure.
Luke, the writer, because you can compare his work to the other gospels, where the gospels will have things arranged in completely different ways, but that's because they're trying to make theological points first. Luke is making theological points, but he has a greater emphasis on, let's say, the historical reliability or continuity to a greater degree. Now, it's not to say that
To
chronology.
show the acts of the apostles.
Yes. And now that's not to say that chronology is his primary focus, but he does have a greater interest in it.
Yes, I do think that what you even see this with even history works that are written today. What will happen is they'll be telling their main story, and then they'll reach a character that's like, this is a super cool character. I'm going to talk about his life anyway, because we meet him when he's 30, right? Super cool character. Talk about him.
Preamble. This is what
Preamble,
happened.
and then
Yeah.
go, okay, now let's go back to our main study.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean that
No. And Tom Holland will kind of do this, where I was reading Pax recently, and his first chapter does a really good example of this, where he's almost giving you like a story. It feels like you're reading like a fantasy book almost at times, with the way that the world is fleshed out and it's beautiful. And then he'll stop because he'll talk about one character. Then he'll give you like 100 years of history that led up to that one character and what they did and why they're important. Then he goes back to this big procession that's going on until he gets to the next event or character that he then has to give you another 100 years on. So he's concerned with chronology, and he will show you the chronology when it is timely. But the chronology is not his foremost focus or the way that he's delivering you the information.
Mm-hmm. And I think specifically pairing Agrippa's sin and Agrippa's death, and like this sub-narrative of Agrippa together is important. Right?
So are we saying that the stuff that happened with him killing James happened at an earlier time in the quote unquote timeline, or that this stuff happened after the timeline of Acts and is inserted back?
I think it happened after the timeline of Acts. I don't know about timeline of Acts. I think it happened.
The chronology of Acts.
Yeah. I think it happened later than this specific moment being penned, but those same events may have happened, let's say at the same time as chapter 28 or something in Acts.
Right. Between chapter 11 and chapter 13. Like this happened after that. Chapter 13?
Sure. I tend to think so.
Or at the very least, you can say that it could have happened a year, 2 years after Jesus' death, but it's not absolutely definitive to say that we cannot also say that it happened hardly 10 years after.
Right? What is it? Josephus says that he died in 44?
Yep.
Yeah.
Was there anything else here to point out? But motioning to them with his hands to be silent. I love how colorful this is. He described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison, maybe pointing out a black eye. And he said, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." Then he departed and went to another place. Why didn't he stay with them? Do you think he left Jerusalem?
Well, I mean,
because the rest of them left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's also a good chance they could have been, searched and attacked by whatever his name is, Agrippa.
Yeah,
as well, because he is a wanted man at this point, and I'm sure he knows it. Which, speaking of the arc that is Agrippa's life, Herod Agrippa is not a very good dude. I mean, he does kill one of the holy members of Jesus's inner circle, James, the brother of John, but then he also kills all of the guards, which, of course, I think was standard practice.
Yeah.
But still bad.
Do you think it says right after he kills the guards that he then went from Judea to Caesarea and spent time there? Do you think he was fleeing Judea?
I would have assumed that he had political reasons to leave.
Herod the Great had a massive mansion in Caesarea.
Yeah.
It's part of his estate.
Right.
It's the nicest house he owns.
So do you think things are getting difficult? Just throws his hands up in the air. He's like, I'm done.
I don't even think so.
No?
I think the implication of the next section that we read is that his rule's going well.
Oh, okay.
Right. And he's just going back. He's like, they'll find him or something like that. It doesn't really matter. He's just going back to his home.
He didn't really care in the first place.
Yeah. Well, think about it. He killed James and it pleased the people. And he's like, okay, I can keep doing this. The game for him is not about even necessarily like, I have to stop this. Although it does say, he stretches out his hand to stop the church too. But ultimately for him, it's part of his political game.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
At this point, he's just going home. Yeah. It's not that big of a deal that Peter's out for him.
Yeah.
See, because the next chapter has something to say maybe about Herod's faith or like some dimension of his understanding of the Christian faith, because it plays into his judgment. So I'm curious if that will change your thoughts on it. Colton, you want to read it?
For sure. This is verses 20 to 25 to round off the chapter. Now Herod was angry with the people of Tyre and Sidon, and they came to him with one accord. And having persuaded Blastus, the king's chamberlain, they asked for peace, because their country depended on the king's country for food. On an appointed day, Herod put on his royal robes, took his seat upon the throne, and delivered an oration to them. And the people were shouting, "The voice of a god and not of a man." Immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down, because he did not give God the glory, and he was eaten by worms and breathed his last. But the word of God increased and multiplied. And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had completed their service, bringing with them John, whose other name was Mark.
Okay, this is some Old Testament stuff going on here. If this isn't like Daniel talking to Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know what is. Like this feels like, hey, this is season 2. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna get
Who
worse.
provides
Mhm.
for the food of the nations?
Yeah,
It's like, oh, you don't give that to anybody? Mm. Oh, you think you're a god?
yeah.
Mm.
It's just such a visceral image that it reminds me of the madness of Nebuchadnezzar.
Well, it also, to me, like I'm reading through actually another Tom Holland, great historian.
Super good.
Okay, Spider-Man. I'm reading through Dynasty, which is the rise and fall of House of Caesar. And at this point, what I'm reading is Caesar Augustus, and how slowly he begins to take on this. I mean, Julius Caesar did it too, but it becomes far more ingrained and definitive by the crowds and the Senate passing upon him divine titles by his provision, by his protection. And I think this verse smacks a little bit of that from what I'm reading in a history work, because you see this in the Roman world where it's the provision and protection. That's what gods do. And if you do that, you are partaking in what the gods do. You're doing the work of the gods. You are a god. And I think there's some weird little play in there.
I also think, like, yes, there is that he claimed to be God, therefore struck down by.
He doesn't claim. The people throw it upon him, and he doesn't give the glory to God.
That is true.
Which is how the Roman emperors really get their divinity thing ingrained in what is it called? The imperial cult.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Immediately an angel of the Lord struck him down because he did not give glory to God. So one of the things that we also see pretty consistent in the scriptures is that the Lord will treat people differently according to their understanding of the Lord. That's why the Philistines can handle the ark and they're not struck dead, but when the Israelites do, they are. Now we obviously go to Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar didn't seem to have an active relationship with the Lord, but he was still given judgment because he looked over at all the world. He's like,
I
hey,
think
look.
its responsibility is a big factor in it too.
I
Yeah.
think he did have a relationship with the Lord, but
So I think there's something there.
I think so too. Yeah.
But
And-
I don't know if it's God can't enact judgment. God can only, as in a limiting thing, as though God can only enact so much judgment in proportion to their knowledge. I think that's the way God operates at a personal level, but not at a legal level.
Sure. No, it's not saying that the Lord cannot.
Yeah.
But I think that's the way that the Lord prefers to work. And so when we're in this position where Herod, because he did not give glory to God, presuming that he should have known he ought to have given it to God, does that mean that he had a legitimate, if still in bad state, relationship with the Lord?
I don't think it even has to be with like Jesus or God in a super meaningful way. He is the king of Judea and Samaria. He's half Jewish. He is intimately connected with the Jewish faith, even if he doesn't,
Of the
uphold
lineage
it.
of Esau.
Of Esau.
Yeah.
Really?
Ooh.
Mhm.
Oh.
They finally get the crown. They finally get the blessing. It's
Ah.
funny, eh? It's kind of funny.
Something I didn't bring up earlier about Agrippa is that he is the last Herod.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last one. And then it becomes a Roman province,
Shame
a
they,
proper Roman province.
For
know-
a short period of time.
usually they save the best for last, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also worth pointing out the sudden and painful death of Agrippa is not just, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, is not just mentioned in the Bible. Josephus mentions it as well.
I think he mentions it as poisoning.
He mentions it as he has great pain from his heart and his stomach, such as that was all throughout his body.
Okay.
I think is the kind of the, I might be paraphrasing that a bit, but yes. And so people theorize appendicitis. His appendix burst,
That's kind
of funny.
of lame.
which does mean he has like worm gut.
Yeah.
Oh,
It explains the
It means
worms.
he had worms in him already before he died. Is that what you're saying? That's really gross.
Which is, that's
makes
a
it
rough
worse.
way to go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like you
And
hear,
then his appendix burst. And then it
Humiliating.
is true, like if your appendix actually does burst, not just appendicitis and it inflames up, but if your appendix does burst, death is super quick. Normally in a day, not like there. But also the Bible might be streamlining the event.
Yeah. It's when you think of like this great opponent to the church, you think of something a little bit more dramatic, like Jezebel being thrown off a wall and eaten by dogs.
Eaten by worms, though, is pretty.
I think that's
That is
the way
pretty tough,
the way
yeah.
it's told. It is emblematic. Like I said, Old Testament kind of like the judgment of God. I think they're trying to be obvious with it.
I do also like how they immediately follow up his death by saying, as if like it's in conflict, because they were in conflict. Hey, Herod's dead. Guess what? The word of the Lord increased and multiplied it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was persecuting them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Just
it's
but
one of
also-
those like victory laps, like, and now the Christians walk free and now they win.
guess what? Every opponent of the church is dead or has died.
But can you imagine calling someone else God, and then he just spontaneously dies, and you're like, "Oh, I was wrong." Like, of
Whoops.
course you're gonna be like, "There's got to be a different one then, right?" Like,
What was he
What
doing
does-
wrong?
yeah.
Caleb, you kind of mentioned it. Would this be in the similar vein to the imperial cult?
I think there's a big ties to the
And
imperial
that's why
cult
they
with
would
it.
be saying it to him?
I'm not saying it's part of the imperial cult. What
Sure.
I'm saying is you see some similarities.
But this is why they
the
might be doing
populace,
it.
the populace are aware of this type of
Right.
way of throwing honors onto rulers and governors and tetrarchs who do provide and govern and protect, which are the purposes and responsibility of the gods.
It also should be noted that after the death of Herod, there's a little bit of talk in verse 20 and to a little bit on about like the country of Tyre and Sidon, which would be modern day Lebanon, and then the Judea as a country.
Mm-hmm.
The countries in that day wouldn't be similar to what we do. Is like autonomous, like they have their own sovereign rule kind of thing.
This is the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were a pseudo autonomous zone of like Roman protectorate kind of.
Kind of things in the okay, the provinces, the Roman governance over its territories is not super clean and easy.
Right.
They tried to streamline things, as I forget which one of you guys mentioned, where it's like it does become a province, a proper like integrated normal Roman land after Agrippa. However, there's some weird leeway that they had with a lot of their territories.
Because originally Judea, they almost were like allies to the Romans as they were coming into the east.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with the Seleucids.
I think those are the Greeks that were around at
Yeah,
that time.
that's one of the ancestral Greek.
After Alexander
States.
the Great's empire fell apart.
One of his generals is the Seleucids, and that's
Yep.
where you get Antiochus Epiphanes
Yeah.
the
That is
fourth.
the
And, yeah.
Seleucids,
And the Jews were like, hey, we can either go with the Romans or go with the Seleucids. And we really don't like the Seleucids.
Yeah.
They go with Rome. They turn from allies to vassals, from vassal to Roman province.
to territory then to province. And I think that the biggest evidence of that is they have a king.
Yes.
Yet
Mhm.
yet Rome still governs.
Yeah.
There is no
It's
king in
vassalage.
Gaul. There is no
Right.
king in North Africa. There is no king in Spain.
Yep.
And so that there is a different political system going on right now.
Judea was also a trouble area of the Roman Empire, like
It
historically.
ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Ebbs and flows. It wasn't a constant.
That's true. But I think that it does, like, it shows a little bit later on when there's more Romans governing and stuff like that. The Jews are brought up a lot less, and the Romans are brought up a lot more.
Mm.
It's just one of those progressions in history.
Yeah. And sorry. Barnabas and Saul return.
Do you think they returned because
Mark.
Herod died?
I don't know.
Because that kind of seems how it's framing it in Acts.
It seems, well, I think he's are they at Antioch or is Paul in Tyre?
Well, let's go back to chapter 11. Now, in those days, the prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch, and one of them, named Agabus, stood up and foretold by the Spirit that there would be a great famine over all the world. This took place during the days of Claudius. So the disciples determined, every one of them according to his abilities, to send relief to the brothers living in Judea, and they did so, sending it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul, who were at that time, I believe, in Antioch. So if they are coming back,
So they went to Jerusalem and then came back.
So is this part of Paul's collection fund that you see in Corinthians? You see it a little bit in, I don't think it's in Philippians.
oh wait, hold up, sorry, because to go on an earlier point made, if this is like 10 years later when Herod of Agrippa is elevated to king basically of Judea because of his assistance to Claudius,
Yep.
and then the plague is during the time of Claudius,
Yep.
then that's an argument to be made for this all happening later, 10 years around.
Here's the problem though. That's true. Unless there's two collection. I don't know. Here's part of Paul is not yet authorized by the church to be sent out. In his letters where he's writing to Philippians and not Galatians, forget which of his epistles actually mention this collection fund that's going on. I know Corinthians has it.
I think Galatians does as well, doesn't it?
Maybe.
I thought it was Colossians, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I forget which ones, but there are some of them. Those epistles happen after he has been sanctioned by the early church or by the church to go preach to those areas. And so unless he does multiple collection runs,
I would probably lean on that more so than like there's just a timeline problem here. But I mean, that's possible. It could be a timeline problem that Luke just doesn't care about. But I think I agree with Kole that he would like it would contrive a few things.
Yeah, no, this is one of those things where you could probably do like a good proper study and like maybe even write a whole paper on the timeline here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Because you'd have to go into Josephus, you'd have to get into other extra works.
Well, whenever something happens to a significant figure outside of the biblical text that isn't just religiously significant, that's what people look for when they're doing dates and they're doing timelines and stuff. So if you're just at a baseline doing research and you see a character that is, seems significant but hasn't shown up in the Bible before, do your research. You can find some interesting jumping off points there.
And what's nice is that so many of the characters referenced in Acts, especially, we know that they're recorded by other historical writings during those times.
except
Quite
for
a few of them, yeah.
servant girls who can't open doors.
Well, yeah.
It'd be really funny if she
Unless
was just
they're
in another
written-
text somewhere.
Josephus was like,
This is my favorite servant.
she never lets anyone in to my office.
But there is one person, and speaking of people being brought up quite a lot, there is another person that we didn't talk about in the previous passage, but is pretty important, is John Mark.
Yeah.
John called Mark.
I think I was saving to get into that for when the big thing happens with Barnabas and
The big schism,
They fight each other.
literally.
Who knew that even the early church would have leaders that disagreed?
Yeah,
it's
and
almost
split
like
the
it's
church.
made
Wait,
of
no.
people.
Oh, no,
right?
church politics.
Almost like it's a real church.
Do you think they were arguing about the
My-
church carpets back then?
My church
Oh,
is the
for
real
sure.
church. My church is just like the early church. Oh yeah, how? Because we fight each other.
I was like, oh, wow, I was expecting to argue, but you were right. Ah, good job.
And the next time we meet, we don't bring it up.
Yeah, that's a problem. But that stuff aside, yes, we'll talk about John Mark more.
Mhm.
I think that's the next chapter, right? Or is it a few chapters from now?
I think it's a couple. I think
But-
he's brought up. He's introduced now,
Yeah.
and then he's brought up a couple times. But he becomes a real plot point.
Can I at least
In a
say that
bit.
John Mark most likely wrote the book of Mark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yes.
He's a significant biblical figure.
Yeah.
He's not just talked about and then thrown away. He's not a servant girl. Ooh, sorry. But
Whoa.
He is just a traveling companion.
who wrote one of the most influential books in history?
On the authority of Peter.
Also, he doesn't know how to end
I'm not
it.
trying to throw shade at
He also doesn't know
John
how to
Mark.
end his own gospel. But that's
I mean,
funny.
the only reason he was in the church in the first place is because they were already meeting at his grandma's house. So I'm just saying, like, we talk about Mark being this great guy, but he was just kind of there.
Yeah, that's going to be chapter 15. Chapter 15 is also like such a cool chapter because that's the Jerusalem Council. We'll get there. Like
Oh, I'm so excited for
I
the
need
first
to be there
Jerusalem
for that.
Council. Oh,
that's going to be in like 3 more Acts episodes.
When's
we'll
the
get there.
second Jerusalem Council? Caleb.
Next week, I think.
no.
Because we say the first, but that implies that there was a second.
Yeah,
right?
there's regional councils that have been held in Jerusalem throughout church history, but I don't know if a full blown ecumenical council has ever been held again in Jerusalem. There's going to be someone somewhere that says Caleb's dumb and doesn't know what he's talking about.
Actually.
Yeah, also,
It's gonna
half
be
the ones that
Josh.
were called ecumenical were not actually ecumenical too. So
Yeah.
it makes it more complicated.
Yeah, that's
Another
not
tradition
here
of
nor
the
there.
church.
But there are regional councils that have been held in Jerusalem.
Yep.
Since
We're going to regionals. Hey,
we made it to the
can
regionals.
I end the podcast? Can we wrap this thing up?
Normally, you're the one that's going like,
Yeah.
I need to continue with my funny
I'm just-
business.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
think that the wrap up to this is that this is one of the last times that Peter's brought up in this book, right? He's not brought up much after this.
He's mentioned in the Jerusalem Council.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not much
I-
beyond that.
I
He's
think-
mentioned by Paul.
He's
true.
mentioned a few times by Paul later on. Yeah.
And then Paul has to learn things twice.
Yeah.
Or Peter has to learn things twice.
I
And
guess
Paul goes, I wish the knife would slip.
I've heard people describe that the book of Acts is divided into like the Peter section and the Paul section with a little bit of blur in the middle.
yeah. I like how there are some people who are like intent on saying there was strife in the church and they hated each other, Paul and Peter. I'm like,
Different dispensations, right? Sorry, Caleb.
Not to reveal our opinions on that, but
The hyper dispensationalists
Yeah,
are just
ultra dispensationalists and all the other
They
but
basically believe every chapter of the Bible is a different era of God.
basic.
Because we just can't articulate how God would be, consistent and,
Anyway,
Yeah.
I disagree with them too.
his attributes.
can we all agree though that next time you see your brothers in Christ, greet them with the holy punch, strike them just like
It's
the
But
angelic.
angel.
only in the side and only if they're laying down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Get them when they're sleeping. Just bam.
Next time you see an angel, run, he might hit you.
Bonus points if you could pop their femur out of their hip. I don't know, pull a Jacob.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, hit the angel.
That also might be
his
Jesus.
It might be Jesus. Yeah, if you start wrestling with Jesus, enjoy it while it lasts because it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Get ready for a hip
Lose a hip.
replacement.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's been Acts 12.
This has been a pretty historically heavy section.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we covered it enough and not too much, and that we kept it light enough that it's understandable. I know diving into even Paul's missionary journeys or anything that has to do with timelines is often hard to follow in an audio format, but I would hope that if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you would hit us up at secondраtesaints.com using our chat feature or our email at secondраtesaints@gmail.com. If you'd like to see the rest of the episodes that we've done so far, check us out at secondраtesaints.com. Really?
Our 100th episode.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were signaling how much time we
No.
taken. This is a big announcement that I forgot, and this is the first time we're announcing this. We have our 100th episode coming up. In
Tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, no. In the next little while, I'm not gonna. Yeah, you'll see
I think we're estimating it'll come out at around September.
somewhere around September.
Oh, that's soon. Okay, I didn't realize it was that soon.
And we'll be planning a.
I think we're going to be doing an AMA, and we want it to kind of be like a TERP, but we want to store up some questions that you guys have, obviously about religious stuff, but also if you have questions
Hopefully.
about us specifically, some of our particular thoughts on certain matters, because some of us are a little bit more opinionated on like dispensationalism than others. Maybe you want us to explain what that is. I don't know. It's kind of like a free for all. We want to have fun with it. And if we don't get enough questions, Josh is going to make us do a LAN party and play Halo, which
That was my idea, actually.
Oh,
and
right,
you
that's
guys
right.
didn't want to do it, so
No.
Well, I wanted to do that. That's
Ask
awesome.
Josh
I think
what
it's
colors
awesome.
he can't see.
yeah, yeah. Also, just ask
Half of
questions of the saints and make them as dumb as possible.
yeah, ask
It'll
where
be very
Stuart
fun.
is. We're still trying to find him.
Where's Stuart?
Where is Stuart?
I'm thinking we're making
I'll never
Stuart
tell.
the actual saint on our logo.
Yeah, well, we did take a picture of him for that logo, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
What?
We did.
Then we whited him out because he said he didn't want to be the picture.
Well,
Can't stop us, Stewie.
Can't stop us, Stewie. I don't know how I'm going to edit this.
Why are we telling people that? Why are we telling people that Stuart's actually a real person?
because he is a real person.
Hey,
No, I know, but we're not supposed to tell people.
Stupid.
See, this is the part where I normally get up and then I hit the end of the record button before I realize we don't know how to run a podcast.
We don't know how to end
Anyway,
a podcast.
Okay,
remember,
I'm getting
Clearly, we're at 88 episodes. We should have ended it like 50 episodes ago. I feel like we can't lower the bar of what have you read to. I watched some of a Harry Potter.
I'm not.
movie.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to actually cover it. I just wanted to mention.